Hey everybody, it's Riker Rider, and no, I'm not LPing this game. Like, even when I get everything set up again, I'm not LPing this game because I don't really care for it a lot. I mean, it's alright. Not nearly as good as any of the other 3D FF games. In any case, this is probably my favorite part of Final Fantasy XIII-2 is playing Chronobind. It's a deeper game than I thought it would be when I first started playing. This video is for XIII-2 and anybody else on my channel who doesn't really understand how to play Chronobind. I'm going to show you the strategy that I use to win at this game. Chronobind is a game of anticipation, risk versus reward, and strategy with a peppering of luck. The flow of the game is as follows.
No one knows what the future holds.
At the beginning of each hand, players make 2% bets. Well, by 2% bets, I mean bets equal to 2% of the buy-in, divided into 4 stacks.
Safe this time.
A card is dealt to determine the starting position of the clock hand, as you saw at the beginning of this hand. Then players are dealt 5 cards. Excuse me. Each player then plays 1 card or multiple cards of the same value from his or her hand. The player who plays the highest card earns the right to move the clock hand a number of spaces clockwise or counterclockwise equal to the value of the card that was played. Oh wow, I actually got it. Awesome. Now, normally I wouldn't take a cheap win like this, but it's enough for me. After the clock hand is moved, then players make 1-chip bets on the clock. A card's value is determined by rank, with king being high. There are 2 exceptions. A card that matches the clock hand's current position, henceforth known as a clock hand card, is higher than king. Think of it like trump in spades or bridge or pitch. The second exception is an ace will beat a clock hand card or a king only. If there is a tie, the clock hand stays where it is. Then players place bets on the clock according to the cards they played. The players are dealt new cards, and the game continues into the next trick.
I don't want to miss my shot.
If the clock reaches or passes the 13 during a move, each player makes an additional 2% bet for each card played by the person who moved the clock hand. This is called charging the clock. Sorry, I was pondering what card I wanted to play there.
Did you know our cards would match?
Nice one. Made your choice?
The clock is also charged in the event of a tie on a trick, as you just saw, and it's charged a number of times equal to the number of cards involved in the tie. Bets on the number of each number of the clock are called bind
The
points.
next turn is imperative.
No way I can lose.
If a player stops the clock hand at a bind point, which I hope to do now, oh wow, that's not good.
Look at the grip. Going in for the kill.
Wait, if all the aces are played, then I think I'm just going to win a big pot here. Because nobody can beat me unless they have... No, they can't. Unless somebody else has a king, I win this hand. This will be big if I can get it. Come on. Awesome! That's huge. I think that's the biggest payout I've ever gotten in a single hand. That was big. Now, back to what I was getting at with bind points. If the player stops the clock at a bind point, that player may clock out, just as I did. A player that clocks out wins all the coins on the clock face, plus a number of stacks equal to the number of bind points on the respective space. 1 stack for a single bind, 2 for double, 3 for triple, and just as I did, all 4 for a full bind. The game ends when a player has insufficient chips to charge the clock. That player has bust, and the player with the tallest stack wins. Now, those are the basic rules for Chronobind. At the moment, I would like to go over some strategy. Ideally, what you want to do is charge the clock as much as possible before clocking out on the most lucrative point available on the clock. However, your opponents are doing the same. If you don't have any high cards, you'll want to play defensively. Like I just did now. See, I stopped somebody from making a big payout and getting myself into a sticky situation. And I'll get into those kinds of scenarios later. Where does that take me? That takes me to a good spot. And of course somebody got dealt an ace. Ow! Like I was saying about playing defensively, if you don't have any high cards to throw out, and one of your foes needs to win with a 9 to land on a lucrative space, play the lowest card you have, ideally a 10, that can prevent him from getting to that space. When you have pairs of low cards, especially early in the hand, play them all at once so that you can get more new cards in your hand for the next trick, and it will make it easier for you to get large payouts later in the hand. The single best point of advice I can give you for this game, and, well, any trick-based card game for that matter, yeah, it'll work for any trick-based card game.
Looks like a standoff.
Excuse me. Like I was getting at, this works for any trick-based card game. Just keep track of the number of cards that have been played. The game keeps track of it for you for the most part with bind points, but, oh wow, I have the only ace left. This is good. This actually plays into something I was going to talk about later, but I'm going to talk about it now. Because this is a pertinent time to discuss it. If you have multiple kings in your hand, and everybody knows where all the aces, and you know where all the aces are, if you play your kings one at a time like this, you can make a really huge payout, and that's what I'm going to try to do here. It doesn't matter which way you move the clock, because it's going to charge either way. No, I'm going to clock out next turn. Because I know it's only going to be a single bind, but I've charged the clock enough that it'll still be a pretty decent payout. It's not bad. It's almost 10 times the base rate. Like I was saying, the game keeps track of the number of cards that have been played with bind points on the clock, but keep in mind that the initial card used to determine the clock hand position does not get used in the deal and is not represented on the clock face. When you have right, I already talked about playing pairs early. Do not play pairs of high cards together. You'll want to hold on to these to have as much control over the clock as possible. The reason for this is because if you're attempting to clock out on a bind point that does not involve charging the clock, you can throw one card out of your pair, or even a set if you have them. And save the other for the next trick. This is particularly important if none of that card has been thrown out, or no kings have been thrown out. If you throw your entire set on a trick, and someone ties it, you've lost control of the clock, and someone can just make out like a bandit with the correct card. The only time when it is correct to throw sets of high cards is when you know for certain that the only aces and kings that are left are the ones in your hand. And like I was getting at before, generally it's, oh my goodness, this hand is terrible. This is like the worst hand. I think this is actually the worst hand possible. Can we be playing poker with these cards? This would be that'd be a really cool poker hand, but not going to work this time. Generally, it's a bad idea to clock out early in the hand, though there are situations in which clocking out early is correct. It's never correct to clock out on the first trick, almost never correct on the second, and rarely correct on the third. After that, it depends on how risky the board state is. Like, that is definitely not an appropriate time to clock out, because I believe that was just a win on literally a minimum bet. Yeah, that was minimum bet. If the clock hand is very close to a lucrative payout point, especially one space away, it can be right to take a cheap win to defend your stack. The AI is more likely to clock out on a bind point, resulting in a win of at least 10 times the table's base rate.
I'm your toughest competition.
Additionally, when you have control of the clock, try to move the clock hand in a direction that allows you to charge the clock. Additionally, when you have control of the clock, pay attention to your hand. If you can move the hand to a position that matches a card in your hand, you will have a clock hand card to throw on the next trick, and thus maintain control of the clock. What do I throw here? I don't think I have enough big cards to do much, so I'm just going to throw a low card. Keep a particularly close eye on how many kings have been played. A clock hand card can always charge the clock by rewinding it to 13, and if a lot of kings have gone, whoever has a clock hand card will get a large payout unless someone drops an ace. This is particularly dangerous if the clock hand is at 1 or 12. If you get into this situation, it is often correct to take a small win if you can. It is also a good idea to keep track of how many face cards have been thrown in general. Comparing the number of unplayed face cards with the number of cards that are left in the deck can give you an idea of whether someone is holding a card that can stop you. Try to save your kings for when you have control of the clock and are about to clock out. If you have a clock hand card and a king in hand, the only things that can stop you from clocking out are another clock hand card or an ace, or another king on the trick that you intend to clock out on.
I can overcome my cage.
When you're attempting to go out like this, it is imperative that you keep track of the number of aces that have been played as well as the number of cards left in the deck. You don't want the stacks to get high, then have the hand drawn because you miscounted the number of cards remaining in the deck. And finally, aces are very useful for anticipation. If you get one, hold it until the board looks risky, then drop it to block someone else's win and possibly get a big win of your own, especially if it's late in the hand. And that's really all the advice I have for this game. If you follow it and pay attention, then you should be able to do pretty well in this game. Playing this 10 will stop the AI from clocking out with a 9 to get over to the triple bind point on the 11 space. And if I win the hand, it'll put me in nice shape.
Stalemate?
Wow. Wow, this is interesting.
Nervous?
There's still 3 kings and 3 aces out there, and there's been how many tricks? Well, the best way to quickly count the number of cards left in the deck is to add up all the bind points, add 1 to that, and then subtract 20, which is the number of cards in their hand. So there's 9, 10, 13, 17, 21 cards out, and 20 cards in the player's hand. So there are 11 cards left in the deck, meaning there's going to be at most 2 tricks. So I think I can get a pretty good payout. Since there's only 11 cards left in the deck, and there's only 1 king played, odds are someone's going to try to throw a king on this trick. Now, if somebody throws an ace, I'm fine with that. If somebody throws a king, I'm fine with it, because those will be out for the next hand. Wow, nobody threw a king or an ace. That's unfortunate. Because if I'd thrown an ace, if I'd thrown my king instead of my ace, odds are that somebody was holding one, and that was just really bad luck.
Lady likes my woman tonight.
Lock each other.
The tie on the first trick is also very unusual. Control of the clock doesn't matter, because as I discovered playing this game more, the bets aren't actually placed until after the clock hand has been moved. So that's why it's never correct to clock out on the first trick, because you actually can't. I still can't believe I got that 60,000 coin win. Another thing I've noticed is the AI is actually better at the game the higher your table rate is. Let's just go ahead and throw this clock hand card now.
Hey, don't steal my move.
Because if somebody throws another one out, it charges the clock, and if nobody throws out a bigger card... Oh, that's fortunate. I think I just throw another... Or not a 5, a 6, sorry.
You see that?
Yeah, I can't believe it actually gave me another one. So we're actually going to, like I said, move it back to the 13 to charge the clock. And yeah, it's too early to clock out.
Time for the hatchet.
Want me to throw the game?
Do I have a king anywhere? I don't. So I think I'm just going to throw a low card and see what happens. I'm really glad I did. Yeah, there's one AI, usually the guy that does the worst, that tends to take any win he can, and it's really annoying when you're trying to set up. Oh yeah, one other point of advice is
I can still make this work.
knowing your exponent. Or not exponents, but knowing, well, I guess knowing exponents is part of it, but, you'll also want to know, what are they? Sequences of cards that let you chain clock cards, especially if you're holding a lot of the aces like I am.
Set to all fate's doings.
Now I got it. This could be my chance.
Wow, I'm holding all 4 aces. You know what? I'm going to do something a little bit risky here. I'm going to throw 3 aces to get back to the king, and then see if somebody throws a king on this. Because now there's a triple bind point. There's a triple bind point over by the ace.
Good game's a good game.
I'm going to see if somebody bites on this king. If somebody bites on this king, I'll be in really good shape. Awesome. Now there's literally just 1 card in the whole deck. But wait a minute, actually that's not good. Because if somebody has the last king, you know what? Screw it, I gotta try it.
Yes, mine.
Oh wow, somebody did have the last king. That's awesome. Man, I got lucky. I will take that. I guess that makes up for that really unlikely win from before. Whatever. We're looking to be in pretty good shape now. Now I was saying about chaining clock cards. If you can get into a chain of cards where each card is double the last one, like for instance a deuce, a 4, and an 8, or like a 4, an 8, and a 3, because 16 modulus 13 is 3. For those of you who are not familiar with the modulus operator from math, it's basically, if you remember remainders from long division, then that's basically what the modulus operator is just take the remainder. It is like divide, but instead of taking your answer being the number of times that it divides into, you just take the remainder of what happens after long division.